In December 1944, Captain Thomas "Tommy" Harrison departed from Foggia Airfield in Italy aboard a B-24 Liberator on what his squadron was told was a routine supply drop to resistance fighters in occupied Yugoslavia. His aircraft never reached its destination. The Army Air Forces declared the crew missing in action, presumed shot down over the Adriatic Sea. His wife received the standard letter of condolence and a folded flag. 75 years later, mountain climbers discovered the twisted wreckage of his bomber buried beneath an avalanche in the Swiss Alps, 300 miles from his supposed flight path, carrying cargo that wasn't medical supplies. And inside the navigator's compartment, investigators found documents that would force the Pentagon to admit to a mission so classified it had been erased from all official records: the theft of Nazi gold reserves from a facility that officially never existed. Welcome to Archivo Occulto. Before we dive into this incredible story of family secrets and government betrayal, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe the truth should never stay buried, hit that subscribe button. Dr. Sarah Harrison Chen had been sorting through research papers when the international call came through her Georgetown University office. As a specialist in World War II European operations, she'd grown accustomed to inquiries about missing personnel files. This call felt different. Dr. Harrison Chen, this is Inspector Klaus Weber with the Swiss Federal Police. We have discovered aircraft wreckage that may be connected to a relative of yours. Sarah's pen stopped moving. Her grandfather had been Thomas Harrison, missing since 1944. Alpine rescue teams found the wreckage yesterday at 2,800 meters elevation. It's a B-24 Liberator, tail number 4278543. Records show this aircraft was assigned to Captain Thomas Harrison. Sarah pulled up her personal files. She'd spent decades researching her grandfather's disappearance, but had never found records beyond the basic missing in action report. Inspector, official records state my grandfather was lost over the Adriatic Sea during a supply mission to Yugoslav partisans. What was his plane doing in the Swiss Alps? That's what we'd like to determine. There's something else. We've recovered cargo that doesn't match the official mission description. Sarah stared at the family photograph on her desk. Her grandmother had always insisted Tommy was too experienced to get lost on a simple supply run. She'd spent 50 years claiming something else had happened. I'll be on the next flight to Zurich. After hanging up, Sarah realized her grandfather's plane had been found 300 miles from where it was supposed to be. As a military historian, she knew that kind of navigation error was virtually impossible for an experienced crew. The helicopter flight to the crash site took Sarah over spectacular mountain scenery, but her attention was focused on Inspector Weber's briefing materials. The B-24 had crashed at nearly 3,000 meters elevation in a remote area completely inaccessible during the 1944 winter. The avalanche that buried the aircraft appears to have occurred during the same storm that brought down the plane, Weber explained. Our specialists believe the crew survived the initial crash, but were killed when the mountainside collapsed hours later. The bomber had hit nose first, driving the cockpit deep into rocky slope, but the tail section and cargo bay were remarkably preserved under tons of ice. Inspector, have you determined what cargo the aircraft was carrying? Weber's expression grew serious. According to American records, your grandfather was carrying medical supplies for Yugoslav resistance, but what we found doesn't match that description. They landed on a rocky ledge below the crash site. The B-24's tail section protruded from ice like a metallic gravestone, serial numbers still visible after 3/4 of a century. Dr. Martina Fuchs, the forensic investigator, met them at the wreckage. We've accessed the navigator's compartment where your grandfather would have been stationed. We found personal effects confirming his identity, but also documents that raise significant questions. Sarah approached the opening cut into the aircraft's fuselage. Inside, she could see the navigator's station with instruments still frozen in place. What exactly did you find in the cargo bay? Weber led her to a secured tent where recovered materials were cataloged. What Sarah saw made her understand why Swiss authorities had contacted her directly. Gold bars, dozens of them, stamped with Nazi eagles and identification numbers. Each bar weighed 12.5 kilograms and bore German Reichsbank markings. Conservative estimates suggested over 500 kilograms of gold, worth millions even in 1944 values. Your grandfather wasn't flying a supply mission to Yugoslavia, Dr. Fuchs said carefully. He was transporting Nazi gold reserves. Sarah stared at the gold bars, trying to reconcile this discovery with everything she'd believed about Tommy's final mission. Have you contacted American authorities? We sent preliminary reports yesterday. The response was unusual. Rather than expressing interest in recovering American personnel remains, they immediately claimed diplomatic immunity over all materials and demanded we suspend investigation pending arrival of a classified recovery team. Sarah felt growing suspicion. If Tommy's mission had been legitimate, why would American authorities try to prevent Swiss police from investigating? As a historian, I can tell you that unauthorized American flights over neutral Swiss territory would have violated international law. If my grandfather was in Swiss airspace, it suggests he was involved in something the government couldn't officially acknowledge. Dr. Fuchs opened a sealed evidence container. We found something else, a sealed pouch containing coded documents and what appears to be a detailed map of German facilities. Tommy hadn't just been carrying gold. He'd been carrying intelligence about German operations, possibly including locations where Nazi treasures were stored as the war neared its end. Her phone rang. Unknown international number. Dr. Harrison Chen, this is Colonel Michael Stevens with U.S. Army Historical Records. I understand you're investigating aircraft wreckage related to your grandfather. Colonel, I'm at the crash site. We found evidence that raises serious questions about his final mission. You're dealing with materials that remain classified under current national security guidelines. Any documents or cargo found at that site fall under U.S. military jurisdiction regardless of location. My grandfather has been missing for 75 years. My family deserves to know what really happened. Your grandfather died serving his country on a classified mission. That's all the information I can provide. You need to cease independent investigation and report to the American Embassy immediately. And if I refuse? The colonel's tone hardened. You're dealing with information that could compromise ongoing intelligence operations. Continuing without authorization could result in serious legal consequences. After hanging up, Sarah faced the same choice countless families had faced. Accept the official story or risk government retaliation pursuing the truth. Inspector Weber spoke quietly. Swiss law gives us jurisdiction until materials are formally transferred through diplomatic channels. If you wish to examine evidence your grandfather died protecting, we can ensure access before the Americans arrive. Show me everything. The portable laboratory buzzed with activity as Dr. Fuchs examined documents found in Tommy's navigation compartment. Sarah watched her grandfather's handwriting emerge from pages preserved by alpine cold for 3/4 of a century. Your grandfather kept meticulous records, Dr. Fuchs observed. These aren't just navigation logs. They're detailed intelligence reports about German gold movement operations. Sarah studied Tommy's neat handwriting. Documents dated December 1944 contained precise coordinates, facility descriptions, and transportation schedules for moving valuables from Germany into neutral countries. These documents suggest my grandfather was tracking Nazi efforts to hide stolen treasures as the war neared its end. More than tracking, Weber replied, examining a coded message. According to this communication, your grandfather was part of an Allied operation to intercept and recover Nazi gold before it could be moved to post-war hiding places. So Tommy wasn't stealing gold. He was recovering stolen gold. Dr. Fuchs produced additional materials. We found communications between your grandfather and an Allied intelligence network operating throughout occupied Europe. The operation was codenamed Golden Retriever. Sarah examined the coded communications. The pattern of dates and locations suggested systematic efforts to intercept Nazi treasure convoys throughout the war's final months. We've also found evidence your grandfather's aircraft wasn't alone. Radio communications indicate he was part of a larger formation scheduled to rendezvous with Allied agents in Switzerland. What happened to the other aircraft? We're trying to determine that. According to Swiss Air Force records, no American aircraft were given permission to enter Swiss airspace in December 1944. Yet your grandfather's logs indicate he was expecting to land at a Swiss airfield. Sarah's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Your grandfather died protecting information that could expose war crimes still being covered up today. Be careful who you trust. A friend of Tommy's. She showed the message to Weber, who frowned. Someone is monitoring your investigation. Someone who knows about your grandfather's mission. Dr. Fuchs interrupted. You need to see this immediately. She led them to a computer workstation analyzing the gold bars. These aren't just Nazi gold reserves. According to identification numbers, these specific bars were stolen from occupied countries: France, Belgium, Netherlands. This gold was looted from conquered nations. And according to post-war records, most of this gold was never recovered. Governments have been searching for these specific reserves for decades. Sarah's phone rang again. Colonel Stevens. Dr. Harrison Chen, where are you in your investigation? I've found evidence my grandfather was part of an Allied operation to recover stolen Nazi gold. Why wasn't this information provided to our family? You're dealing with classified intelligence operations involving multiple Allied governments. Operation Golden Retriever remains classified because it implicates institutions and individuals still influential today. What institutions? Banks, governments, and private collectors who received stolen treasures after the war. Your grandfather's mission was to intercept gold shipments before they could be laundered through Swiss banking systems and post-war recovery networks. Sarah felt the scope expanding. You're saying my grandfather died trying to prevent war criminals from hiding stolen treasures? Your grandfather died protecting evidence that could destabilize international financial relationships in place since 1945. Some secrets are classified not because they threaten current security, but because they threaten current institutions. After hanging up, Sarah realized Tommy hadn't just been carrying gold, he'd been carrying proof of systematic looting that had never been fully prosecuted or compensated. Inspector Weber received urgent communication from headquarters. We have a problem. The American embassy has filed formal diplomatic protests. They're claiming the crash site falls under military recovery jurisdiction and demanding immediate cessation of Swiss police activity. More importantly, we've received information that other parties are also interested in your grandfather's cargo. Dr. Fuchs pointed to her computer screen. We've been monitoring internet activity related to the crash site discovery. Someone has been purchasing detailed topographical maps of this region and researching alpine recovery techniques. Someone else is planning to access the crash site. Someone with significant resources and detailed knowledge of what your grandfather was carrying, Weber confirmed. A new encrypted message appeared. Meet me at the Jungfrau-Joch station tomorrow at noon. I have information about the other aircraft in Tommy's formation. Come alone and bring copies of everything you've found. Time is running out. Major Erich Zimmermann, retired. Sarah showed the message to her companions. Weber looked concerned. We have no record of any Major Zimmermann. This could be a trap. Or someone who knows the truth about my grandfather's mission. I'm going to that meeting. The train ride to Jungfrau-Joch took Sarah through spectacular alpine scenery, but her attention was focused on encrypted files Weber had provided. Tommy's navigation logs revealed details about Operation Golden Retriever that explained why the mission remained classified. At 3,454 meters above sea level, Jungfrau-Joch station was isolated where conversations could occur without surveillance. At exactly noon, an elderly man approached her. Dr. Harrison Chen, I'm Erich Zimmermann. Thank you for coming. He was tall, thin, with decades of military bearing. His eyes were sharp despite advanced age. Major Zimmermann, how did you know about my grandfather's mission? Because I was there, December 15th, 1944. I was the pilot of the second B-24 in your grandfather's formation. Sarah felt her heart stop. You flew with Tommy? I flew with Captain Harrison on what we were told would be the most important mission of our careers. We were tasked with intercepting Nazi gold being moved through Switzerland to American banking contacts. American banking contacts? Zimmerman's expression darkened. Your grandfather didn't die in an accident. He died because someone in Allied command wanted Operation Golden Retriever to fail. What do you mean? The mission was compromised from the beginning. Someone with access to our flight plans had informed the Germans about our route and timing. When we crossed into Swiss airspace, German fighters were waiting. Zimmerman pulled out a worn leather portfolio containing photographs, maps, and communication records from 1944. These documents show coordination between Allied personnel and Swiss banking officials. Your grandfather discovered that Operation Golden Retriever wasn't just about recovering stolen gold. It was about ensuring that gold ended up in the right hands after the war, American hands. What happened during the mission? We took off from Foggia on schedule, but as we approached the Swiss border, our intelligence contacts failed to provide promised air corridor clearance. Instead of undefended airspace, we encountered German fighters who knew exactly where we would be. Zimmerman's voice grew heavy. My aircraft was hit first. We managed to crash land in a valley 50 kilometers from your grandfather's location. 4 of my crew survived, but Tommy's plane was pursued into the mountains. The last radio transmission I received from your grandfather was a warning. He said the intelligence network had been compromised and that he was carrying evidence of American collaboration with Nazi treasure-hiding operations. Sarah felt cold certainty. Tommy was killed to prevent him from exposing Allied collaboration with war criminals. American corporate collaboration. Some of the largest banks and corporations in America were coordinating with Nazi officials to hide stolen treasures that would later be discovered and claimed by American institutions. After the war, I spent decades trying to expose what really happened. Every time I got close to the truth, my military records were classified, my contacts were transferred, and my access was restricted. Zimmerman's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His expression changed. We need to leave immediately. My contacts indicate American recovery teams are moving toward the crash site. If they secure your grandfather's aircraft, this evidence will disappear forever. What evidence? The complete records of Operation Golden Retriever were stored in a sealed compartment in your grandfather's navigation station. If those records are recovered by the people who have been covering up this operation for 75 years, the truth will never come out. Can you help me get back to the crash site? I've been preparing for this moment for 75 years. I have resources that can get us to that mountain within hours. But once we go after those records, there's no going back. The people who killed your grandfather will try to kill us too. Sarah thought about Tommy's final mission, about her grandmother's 50 years of questions, about evidence that could expose one of the largest cover-ups in American history. My grandfather died trying to expose the truth. I'm not stopping now. The helicopter Zimmerman arranged was civilian rescue aircraft, but the pilot was clearly former military with special operations precision. As they flew toward the crash site, Sarah studied additional documents Zimmerman provided. These financial records show gold transfers totaling billions in today's values. How many American institutions were involved? More than you'd believe. Banks, corporations, museums, private collectors. The network your grandfather was investigating extended from Wall Street to Washington to Swiss financial centers. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent call from Inspector Weber. Dr. Harrison Chen, where are you? American military aircraft arrived at the crash site 30 minutes ago. They've established a security perimeter and are claiming exclusive jurisdiction. Have they accessed my grandfather's aircraft? They're cutting into the navigation compartment now. Whatever evidence was stored will be gone within hours. Zimmerman leaned toward the phone. Inspector Weber, this is Major Eric Zimmerman. I'm bringing Dr. Harrison Chen back with legal documentation that may complicate the American jurisdiction claim. What kind of documentation? Swiss government records from 1944 authorizing Allied aircraft to land at Swiss airfields during specific intelligence operations. If Captain Harrison's mission was conducted under these agreements, the aircraft and contents fall under Swiss recovery jurisdiction. As their helicopter approached the crash site, Sarah could see multiple American aircraft and significant military presence around Tommy's B-24. Recovery teams were using heavy equipment to access the aircraft's interior. American forces are ordering us to maintain distance. They're claiming military security restriction. Zimmerman directed the pilot to land on a rocky outcrop 500 meters from the crash site. Through binoculars, Sarah could see American personnel removing materials from Tommy's aircraft. "They're taking everything. We're too late." "Not necessarily. Your grandfather was a navigator. He understood backup systems and redundant information storage." Zimmerman produced a handheld radio and transmitted on emergency frequencies. Within minutes, he received response from Weber. "Inspector, we're in position southwest of the crash site. Have the Americans accessed navigation compartment C-47? "Affirmative. They've removed all visible materials." "And compartment C-52? "There is no compartment C-52 listed in aircraft specifications." Zimmerman smiled. "There is if you know where to look. Your forensic team needs to examine the space behind the navigator's oxygen system. There should be a concealed compartment that doesn't appear on standard B-24 blueprints." Sarah watched through binoculars as Swiss personnel approached American recovery teams. Heated discussions ensued, but eventually Swiss investigators were allowed to examine the navigation station. 20 minutes later, Weber's voice crackled through radio with excitement. "Major Zimmerman, we found it. Concealed compartment containing documents, photographs, and what appears to be a complete list of American institutions involved in Nazi gold laundering operations." Sarah felt vindication mixed with anticipation. Tommy had been more thorough than anyone had imagined. "Those documents need to be secured under Swiss government protection before the Americans realize what you found." "Already done. We're transporting all materials to secure facilities in Bern under diplomatic protection protocols." As they watched American forces hastily packing their recovery operation, Sarah realized Tommy's foresight had finally paid off. After 75 years, the evidence he'd died protecting was going to be revealed. The secure conference room in Swiss Federal Criminal Police headquarters hummed with activity as international law enforcement officials examined documents Tommy Harrison had hidden in his B-24's navigation compartment. "Dr. Harrison Chen," said Dr. Klaus Müller, Switzerland's expert on Nazi gold recovery. "Your grandfather documented the most comprehensive financial conspiracy in modern history. These records prove systematic collaboration between Nazi officials and American institutions to hide stolen treasures." Sarah examined the meticulously organized files, bank transfer records, corporate communications, and detailed lists of American companies that had received Nazi gold through Swiss laundering operations. "How much money are we talking about?" "Conservative estimates suggest over $50 billion in current values. But the real significance isn't the amount. It's the institutions involved and the ongoing cover-up." Major Zimmerman studied a communication between Tommy and his intelligence contacts. "Your grandfather wasn't just documenting financial crimes. He was exposing a network that included American intelligence officials who were supposed to be investigating these operations." Sarah felt the scope expanding. American intelligence was protecting the institutions they were supposed to be investigating. According to these documents, some American intelligence officials were directly profiting from the gold laundering operations they were supposedly trying to stop. Inspector Weber entered with urgent news. "We've received formal diplomatic protests from multiple governments. Americans are claiming national security exemptions. British are citing intelligence cooperation agreements. Even European allies are requesting we limit our inquiry." Sarah looked around the room. Why would so many governments want to suppress information about Nazi gold recovery? Dr. Müller answered grimly. "Because every government that participated in post-war reconstruction received benefit from institutions built with stolen Nazi gold. Banks, corporations, cultural institutions, and political organizations throughout the Western world were funded with treasures stolen from Holocaust victims and conquered nations." Sarah's phone rang. Unknown American caller. "Dr. Harrison Chen, my name is Rebecca Goldstein. I represent families of Holocaust survivors who have been searching for stolen assets for decades. We understand you found documentation that could lead to recovery of treasures that belong to our relatives. I've found evidence of systematic theft and laundering operations, but I'm not sure how it relates to Holocaust restitution. According to our research, many of the gold bars your grandfather was carrying were melted down from jewelry, artwork, and personal treasures stolen from Jewish families throughout occupied Europe. Your grandfather died trying to prevent those treasures from disappearing forever." Sarah felt the human impact of Tommy's mission. This wasn't just about government cover-ups. This was about families who had never received justice. What can be done with this information? We can file international lawsuits against institutions that knowingly received stolen assets. We can demand full disclosure of post-war acquisition records. Most importantly, we can ensure victims are finally acknowledged and compensated. Major Zimmerman had been reviewing additional documents. There's something else your grandfather documented. Operation Golden Retriever wasn't the only mission that was sabotaged. According to these records, there were at least 12 similar operations between 1944 and 1945, all of which failed under suspicious circumstances. Meaning your grandfather discovered systematic betrayal of Allied intelligence operations designed to ensure Nazi treasures ended up in specific American hands rather than being returned to rightful owners. Dr. Mueller produced a chart showing financial flows from 1944 through 1960. The institutions that received stolen Nazi gold used those assets to build some of the largest financial and cultural organizations in America. Museums, universities, banks, and corporations that are still influential today. Sarah studied the chart, recognizing names of institutions she'd visited, companies she'd worked with. Are you saying major American institutions were built with stolen Nazi gold? Your grandfather documented the financial foundation of the post-war American establishment, and he died because some people were willing to kill to protect those foundations. 6 months later, Sarah Harrison Chen stood before the International Court of Justice in The Hague as lawyers presented evidence from Operation Golden Retriever. The documents Tommy had hidden in his B-24 had led to the largest war crimes investigation in modern history. The evidence provided by Captain Harrison's navigation records, announced Chief Justice Patricia Kowalski, demonstrates systematic theft and laundering of assets stolen from Holocaust victims and occupied nations. This court orders full disclosure of all post-war acquisition records from institutions named in these documents. The investigation had expanded to include banks, museums, and corporations in 12 countries. Billions of dollars in reparations were being distributed to families who had waited 75 years for justice. Major Erich Zimmerman, now 98, sat in the gallery. His 75-year fight to expose the truth had finally succeeded. Your grandfather would be proud, he told Sarah after the proceedings. He died believing some truths are worth any sacrifice. Sarah thought about Tommy's final mission, about the questions her grandmother had asked for 50 years, about the evidence that had finally exposed one of history's largest cover-ups. Major Zimmerman, what happens to the people who covered this up for so long? Some are too old for prosecution, others have died, but the institutions they built will be held accountable, and most importantly, the victims will finally receive recognition. As Sarah left The Hague, she realized Tommy's mission hadn't ended with his death in 1944. It had taken 75 years to complete, but justice had finally been served. The navigator who had died trying to prevent stolen treasures from disappearing forever had ultimately succeeded in bringing them home. Did this story move you? Tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe the truth should never stay buried, subscribe to Archivo Oculto, because some missions take generations to complete.